Hi guys, Lisa is here. It's been a long time since I recorded any talks on my YouTube channel because there was a lot of music these days, but now I'm ready to keep my promise and tell you something about Samadhi, about enlightenment. Today's topic is probably the most important for each person and more precisely for the development of his soul. Because no material goods that satisfy our ego can be compared with the feeling of bliss from the union with the Absolute. But unfortunately, some people don't even have a thought to achieve enlightenment, the so-called state of Samadhi, because no one even heard what it is, and even if he did, he certainly doesn't understand why he needs enlightenment for himself. In addition, all that we people of the Western society know about enlightenment is that it's available only to selected yogis and Tibetan monks. I heard about enlightenment for the first time from the lessons of philosophy at the university, when we studied Buddhism and its basic tenets, for example, no desires, no suffering. I had a lot of desires at that time. The very idea of lack of desires was perceived as nonsense. If you are alive, you want something connected with the material reality, but if not, then this is the same as death. Yes, this is death in some sense, the death of the ego, our box in the form of personality and all its growths. I'm convinced that the same thing happens at the moment of death. The separation of the soul from the personality and ego, after which follows the connection with the Creator and we returning back home. Today I want to tell you everything that I know about enlightenment and how I touched it. Only touched because I haven't reached it yet, but I reviewed a bunch of videos on this topic and the experience of people who comprehended Samadhi, or one of its levels. And you know, the main conclusion is that enlightenment is achieved quite easily. This is a stereotype that only yogis can meditate for 20 years before they comprehend it. For some people, Samadhi generally happens spontaneously and without preparation, like with the world-famous philosopher Eckhart Tolle. He enlightened at 29, when he did absolutely nothing for this, and didn't even meditate as far as I know. On the contrary, he was in the state of deep depression. Eckhart Tolle is an amazing person. I read 2 of his books and I highly advise you to read them too. The Power of Now and A New Earth. The way of Eckhart wasn't connected with the spiritual practices. But in general, it's true that in order to come closer to the enlightenment process, it's necessary to raise energy, work with breathing and meditate, trying to slow down the work of the left hemisphere of the brain. And now I will try to explain simply what Samadhi is and what types, or rather the degrees of Samadhi, are stated nowadays. Samadhi is the ultimate goal of many yogis. The state of Samadhi is a state of enlightenment in which the very idea of individual consciousness disappears, and person goes into the pure state of beingness, uniting the observer from the sidelines and the observer in himself, or in the other words, the concept of separation between your ego and the world around you disappears, and you start perceiving yourself united with the whole world, and the borders of your body seem to expand. There are several types of Samadhi: Savikalpa Samadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and Sahaja Samadhi. The first 2 types, Nirvikalpa and Savikalpa, these are the states of enlightenment of the lower level. The first stage, Savikalpa, is only an approach to real enlightenment and identification with the self-awareness and ego. Such state can last from several minutes to several days. The consciousness is not dissolved in it. It hasn't become one with the Absolute, but has already touched it and saw it. The second stage, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, is a temporary stage, while Sahaja Samadhi will last a lifetime. Nirvikalpa is characterized by the complete absence of thoughts, the divine nothing, the complete unity with the Absolute. when internal and external thoughts are stopped. This is the state of delight which in Hinduism is called Ananda. But it's not identical to the delight that we already know in earthly life. This is completely new type of spiritual ecstasy that is inexpressible in words. There is a fundamental difference between the first two types of samadhi and sahaja samadhi as the highest state of samadhi. It consists in the fact that the state of unity with the Supreme that was achieved in nirvikalpa state is not lost, and a person being in the gross physical reality maintains the state of highest enlightenment, dissolving in being. It can no longer be lost. In this form of samadhi, the adept doesn't lose his state of insight, even during the performance of the most mundane deeds. His body has become an instrument of the soul, as some gurus explain. He is one with the Absolute, and the soul has come out of the circles of incarnations, the wheels of samsara. Let him still be in this world, but only in order to fulfill some mission designed only for him. Sahaja Samadhi, unlike Savikalpa and Nirvikalpa Samadhi, no longer needs to reach or enter into it. A person abides in it constantly. Only after reaching Sahaja, the movement of thoughts was completely stopped. People may wonder why we are constantly attacked by thoughts. The answer lies in the concept of karma. As long as person works out karma, the flow of thoughts cannot be completely stopped. During the meditation, a skilled practitioner stops the flow of the mental activity, but only for a while, namely during meditation. Then, when he returns to his daily activities, thoughts come again. If we are able to control them, and especially the process when there is an emotional response to some mental movements, then this is already a great achievement. Here is the wisdom of man. If he has truly achieved a certain degree of awareness in his life, he better manages his emotional reactions and directs the work of mind. However, with all this, person doesn't achieve enlightenment. The state of samadhi, sahaja samadhi, is characterized by the fact that there are no more karmic attachments left, as a result of which an unconscious stream of thoughts has nowhere to appear from. Having learned about the types of samadhi, I can say for sure that I reached the first type of savikalpa samadhi, and even then only for a few moments. The first time this happened to me on my dry 7-day fasting. You can hear this story in my video about fasting. Then I experienced just incredible ecstasy breathing in the fresh, frosty air. A feeling of bliss, and that I was bathing in the ocean of love. But after fasting, it stopped right away. Also, several times I sang on the stage and I went in the state of easy trance, when I no longer understood where I was, whom I was, and what was happening. But together with this, I didn't stop singing. After a couple of years, I started reading Eckhart Tolle and listening to Osho's audiobooks and trying to cling to the idea of living in the moment. Oh, how difficult it was. Just try to be here and now for at least 10 minutes, perceiving each object around as something new, interesting, as if you have never seen it before. I can say for sure that almost immediately consciousness falls asleep and begins to fly into the past or future. In short, then I wasn't able to achieve the buzz of now. This spring I've been fasting again and intensely listened to Sadhguru lectures and experience of people who were awakening at some school, where they used some exercises to awaken. They were completely disconnected from the outside world and devoted themselves to practices, fasting, meditation, and all kind of exercises like I'm walking along the road, I see legs, whose legs are these? My legs. And thanks to these practices, people from young to old were awakened. The main signs of the awakening that they noted were vivid, unusual experiences, special effects, and insights, and their range was very large. These can be an experience of light, divine sounds, visions of angels or gods, feeling of overwhelming love, ecstasy, a sense of unity, vision not for the eyes but in some other incomprehensible way. And of course, a feeling of confidence that I'm not a body consciousness. Each person had his own special effects, but there is only one common denominator of spiritual awakening: self-awareness with consciousness and not with the material body. When enlightenment occurs, the illusion of duality, multiplicity, ceases to be perceived as reality. Many people describe this as feeling of body expanding to the unbelievably huge size. And instead of consciousness and self-identification of himself as a person, there is simply a presence that can be described only with the words, I am. I am everything, everything within me. Enlightened people perceive others as part of themselves, and with this comes understanding, acceptance, and incredible need to help others, to serve people. Many enlightened people cease to see the point in their previous pursuits, and some goals imposed by society simply disappeared. Enlightenment is a realization of truth, after which all questions dissolve and disappear, and all the answers, concepts, understandings accumulated on the spiritual path cease to matter. Enlightenment is the end of search, the end of personality, the end of illusions. Life after the enlightenment is like watching a movie in which you are no longer identified with the main character, although you feel it. Rather, you are the very space in which this entire film of life unfolds. And this film, in some incomprehensible way, consists of the same material as you. You know, I understood what was going on when I remembered my practice of lucid dreaming. You can watch my videos about this on my channel. The fact is that during the moment of awakening inside the dream, mini enlightenment seemed to happen to me. When the body is pierced by current and you understand that everything is real and not at the same time. In lucid dreams, you understand that all this is not real. It's all game, although everything around seems super realistic. It seems to me that in real life, this is how enlightenment is felt. At least in one of his interviews, Eckhart Tolle also speaks of similar sensation of current throughout the body at the moment of enlightenment. He calls it the sense of tickling. So this spring I've been fasting and tried to immerse myself in the moment here and now as much as possible. This worked especially well for me while washing dishes. I like washing dishes because this is the meditation in motion. For a few seconds I seemed to forget who I was. Thoughts left my head and peace and bliss were felt in my soul. After getting out of fasting, I again began to get distracted by life and get involved in it completely. Then something happened to me recently when I was making Kundalini Yoga. I did intensive exercises for 11 minutes, breathing and moving my arms like this. After that, there was a sensation of fountain of energy flood out of my body, and I felt like I had several phantom hands at once. And my whole body seemed to expand. Then there appeared tears of happiness in my eyes. It seems to me that this was an uplift of Kundalini energy. The awakening of Kundalini, sometimes described as attack of ecstasy and body shaking. But after this episode, I returned to completely normal life. And what does the science say regarding enlightenment? The question is poorly studied, but recently I saw super interesting woman's monologue on TED Talks. The video is called My Stroke of Insight and the speaker is Jill Bolte Taylor. She is a scientist and neuroanatomist. One morning, she realized that she was having a massive stroke. And as it happened, she felt her brain functions slip away one by one. Speech, movement, understanding. She studied and remembered every movement. But what is interesting, hemorrhage occurred in the left hemisphere of her brains, which is responsible for logic, analysis, thought process, and this hemisphere seemed to turn off. The right hemisphere has remained working, which is responsible, as you know, for the perception of the moment here and now, for the imagination and perceiving reality in symbols and images. Jill tells how she experienced incredible delight after turning off the left hemisphere. Worries and thoughts were gone. There was only a buzz from life in the moment. In short, she experienced something similar to enlightenment. However, this way of enlightenment can hardly be called environmentally friendly. From her experience, it can be assumed that the enlightenment is the disabling of the left functions of left hemisphere of brain and transition to the right hemisphere. But in case of real samadhi, I guess you are not harming your body. Otherwise, all gurus would fall dead or paralyzed right after the samadhi. By the way, the speech of Jill is very colorful and I recommend you to watch it. Another interesting scientific information. Dr. Andrew Newberg of the University of Pennsylvania during his research found that meditation reduces blood flow in the back of the upper parietal gyrus, which is responsible for deep sensitivity and body boundaries. This fully explains a feeling of unity with the world, which is often described by people who have tried meditation on themselves. If you block the work of the gyrus, says Newberg, you will stop feeling where your personality ends and the world begins. Meditation won't be beneficial to all patients with emotional disorders, says his colleague, Professor Richard Davidson of Wisconsin. For some categories of people, it can even be harmful. Davidson argues that meditation practices are capable for changing the state of neural tissue in the areas of the brain responsible for empathy, as well as attention and emotional reactions. This, according to Professor, can negatively affect on relations with people around and lead to a feeling of loss and loneliness that can undermine a person's mood, even if he is mentally healthy. I can't make any conclusions on this subject, but practically I can say that meditation brought me only pleasure, stable psyche, and feeling of happiness. My practices of Kundalini Yoga, with its intensive breathing, brought me out of deep depression, so I disagree with Dr. Davidson, sorry. But it's only my own experience. I believe that at least it's not as harmful as using drugs or drinking alcohol. In conclusion, I want to summarize why, in my opinion, it's necessary to strive for enlightenment for every person on planet. Firstly, there will be more love and empathy in the world. Wars will stop as consciousness goes to the different level. Secondly, enlightenment saves us from unnecessary worries, fears, because life in the moment is comfortable and there is no need to think about the past or worry about your future. Thirdly, this is an incredible thrill from life. Joy, regardless of the amount of money in your pocket or the presence of life partner, and unconditional feeling of joy in life and love. And finally, enlightenment, according to the Eastern sages, is the way out of the need to incarnate again and again in the human's body. Maybe someone else hasn't played enough in life and believes that perception of material reality is the best experience that exists in the universe. but one who at least once felt himself connected with the Creator understands that there is nothing better in the world than this sensation. If you suddenly decided to try to achieve enlightenment, I wouldn't advise you to try hard. Nothing will come of the strong desire of the ego and excessive efforts. There is also such a thing as imaginary enlightenment, when a person, or rather his ego, mistakenly believes that he has known the truth. And this is just a trap and nothing more than pride. It's better to try to live consciously in the moment, each time asking myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then your life will become a little bit better. Friends, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like my videos and write your comments. And for today I have nothing more to add. Stay true and kind, the rest things never mind.